Learning to Drive, Chapter 18. About a year and a half after I arrived in America, Alice and I went to a prosthetics clinic in downtown Chicago to look into getting a new leg for me. A lady came out of the clinic as we were heading toward the door. This woman had a prosthetic leg. If you yourself have a prosthesis, you can always tell when someone else has one. I noticed this woman as soon as she came out of the building. I watched her go to one of the cars in the parking lot. I assumed that she was going to go to the passenger side, and I wondered where her driver might be. Instead, to my surprise, she opened the door of the driver's side. I said, "Whoa, is she going to drive that thing?" I slowed down to watch, and indeed, that is just what she did do. She got in, shut the door, turned on the engine, and zoom, she went driving off. I nudged Alice. "Did you see that woman? She has a prosthesis, and yet she drove that car." Alice said, "Well, if she can do it, so can you. Right, Farah?" The idea that I might one day drive a car thrilled me to the core. I felt like a window had opened and given me a glimpse of a whole new lifetime of possibilities. I decided to take driver's education at school the next semester. They call it driver's ed. In the class, I learned the rules of the road. For example, about stop signs and turn signals and what my rights were and what other people's rights were. I learned what to do if I got in a car accident. How I shouldn't drive away, but stop and trade information with the other driver. How we should both wait for the police. I learned what to do if I had a flat tire. The only thing I didn't learn in driver's ed was how to drive. They couldn't teach me that because they didn't have any cars specially fitted out for disabled people. I was so disappointed. I collared Alice and said, "Please, please make it happen. I want to learn to drive. I'll do anything. How can I do this?" So Alice, poor thing, did some research. She found a place in Wheaton called the Manjoy Rehab Hospital, which had a special program that helped people like me learn to drive. They charged money, however, and I could not afford their services. So Alice talked to administrators at my high school and said, "You're supposed to offer driver's education to all your students. Since you're not equipped to offer it to this girl, it seems only right that you pay for her to take driving lessons in Marinjoy, where they do have the necessary equipment." Amazingly enough, the school agreed. 1 week after I started driver's ed at school, I went to Marinjoy with Alice. It was a one-story building, and we had to step around a lot of construction because they were tearing down one building and putting up another. But we finally got inside, and Alice told the receptionist, "This girl has an appointment." The teacher came out to meet us, a young woman. She started by putting me through a series of tests. For example, she gave me a sort of vision test. She showed me a shape on a piece of paper, and then she turned the paper over. On the other side were 5 more shapes. One of them, she said, was the same shape I had just seen, but from a different angle. She wanted me to pick out which one. I passed that test and all the other tests the teacher gave me. She then took me to a car outfitted with hand controls. One lever was for shifting gears. Another was both brake and accelerator in one. You turn it one way to make the car go and the other way to make the car stop. We got into the car and I started driving. At least I tried to follow the teacher's instruction, but I couldn't do it. I just could not sort out turning from accelerating to braking to shifting gears. The car went all over the place. I drove into the lawn. I drove into the bushes. Luckily, my teacher was sitting right next to me with controls of her own that overrode mine. She kept me from crashing into people and buildings. But I drove this way and that on their special roads, going too fast or going too slow, and always, always going in the wrong direction. I came home and my shoulders hurt for 3 days because I had been so tense. I lost hope. I said, "Driving's too hard and I can't do it." But time passed and I began to think about my problem. I watched what Alice did when she drove. One day I told Alice, "Look, it's true that I cannot bend my right leg on the knee, but I can still bend my foot. And this other leg is a prosthesis, but I can push with it. And I can bend the knee too. Why don't I try driving a regular car?" This was my own idea. "Just let me try it," I said. We went back to Marion Joy. Alice explained my idea to those people. The teacher tried to talk me out of driving a regular car. She said, "Be patient. You'll get the hang of hand controls by and by. Give it time." I said, "No, I think I can drive a regular car. Let me just try it." So the teacher took me into a special room and tested my reactions and leg strength. In one test, for example, I was supposed to press a pedal each time a light flashed. I passed all these tests, proving that I could do everything a driver needed to do with her feet. Finally, the teacher said, "Okay, let's try it with an actual car." But she said this in a dubious voice. She still didn't favor the idea. We got into a regular car, and I discovered a new problem. I was too short. I could not reach the gas pedal with my foot no matter how far forward I pushed my chair. The teacher said, "Well, there's a place that adapts cars to the needs of people with disabilities. They make hand controls, lifts, and all sorts of other devices. Why don't you go see if they have anything that might help you?" The place was very far away, but Alice said no problem. We drove out there the next day. The mechanic at the workshop was a warm, friendly man. He said, "Yes, actually, we do make a platform that mounts to a gas pedal and builds it up." In fact, he made 2 different kinds of platforms. He gave us one and told us to try it. He said that if it didn't work, we should bring it back and try the other model. We took the platform to Mary and Joy, clamped it to the gas pedal of one of their cars, and it worked perfectly. Now at last I could actually start learning to drive, and it was easy. I couldn't believe how easy driving turned out to be. Once a week that semester I went in for a 1-hour lesson, and I progressed quickly from Mary and Joy's special lot to the street to bigger streets to driving in traffic. It just went so smoothly. In fact, the driver's ed class at school was harder than driving itself. There, in driver's ed, they did their best to scare you. They showed films of people who had been injured or killed in car accidents. Every week they showed videos of horrible crashes and mangled people. They explained how and why each crash happened, all to warn us about the dangers of speeding and especially about the dangers of driving after drinking alcohol. They brought in people who had been injured in accidents caused by drunk drivers to tell us their stories. They also brought in people who had gotten drunk and caused accidents that hurt or killed people. Talking to classes like ours was part of these people's punishment. No matter who came in, they showed images of dead or wounded people. We all left that class panting with fear. For me, those videos of car crashes and those images of blood and mangled flesh were hard to tolerate. Instead of teaching me anything about driving, they put me back in that hospital in Kabul with all the injured children, one of whom was me. Nowadays, I can look at images of bloodshed a bit more easily than I could then. I still don't like it, but I don't quite get so upset. But in those days, I could hardly bear it. According to the rules, after I got my learner's permit, I had to practice driving with someone else in the car for at least 25 hours before I could take my driving test. It was John who took me out after work and on weekends to complete those many hours of practice. He was so patient with me and so wonderfully calm. It was John who really taught me to drive. Even when I did something wrong, he would say, "Never mind, don't worry, try again, you can do it." One girl I knew at school, and I won't mention her name, always tried to make me feel handicapped and unworthy. For some reason, making me feel smaller made her feel bigger. I don't understand why, but when I mentioned that I was learning to drive, she jeered at me. She said they would never give a driver's license to someone like me. Even I flunked the driver's test the first time I took it, she said. How could you possibly expect to pass? Even so, one day I told Alice, "I want to take the test this week." Alice said, "Oh, Farah, you are sure?" I said, "Yes, I'm ready." And I was. Parallel parking, uphill, downhill, I did it all. I passed my driving test the very first time I took it and came home with my license. When I showed it to the girl who said I could never do it, she frowned and got all sulky. Of course, a driver's license didn't do me much good without a car, but once again, dear Alice came to the rescue. She phoned around to all the organizations she knew about, all the churches, all her friends. Alice knows a lot of people from her work with Love Christian Clearinghouse. She asked everyone she knew to ask everyone they knew if anyone had a car they might want to donate to me. Someone suggested that she contact a man named Chris Gossett. She called this fellow and explained the situation, and he wanted to help. During the conversation, he revealed that he was a dentist by profession. But as a side business and hobby, he bought old cars, fixed them up, and sold them. He didn't have a suitable car at the moment, he said, but he would keep an eye out for one. In the meantime, he offered to look at my teeth. Dr. Gossett is a really nice, gentle man. Alice took me to see him, and after an examination, he declared my teeth in terrible shape. He said my gums were a wreck and he would have to deep clean them. Make an appointment, he said, and I'll do the work for free. And he did. Anyway, one day Dr. Gossett called John and said, I have found a car. It's in Holland, Michigan. As it happened, John was going to Holland that day on business, so he stopped by to look at the car. He took some pictures and brought them back to me, and oh my gosh, the car was red. I said, I want the car. Whatever it takes, that's the car I want. Well, John could not act on the matter right away because he had other business trips scheduled. But when he came back 2 days later, he called Dr. Gossett at once and said, okay, she wants the Dodge Neon. Dr. Gossett said, you waited too long. That car found a buyer. I've had it for 2 days. Alice called Dr. Gossett and said, she's devastated. Can't you dig up another car for her? This is serious. Dr. Gossett said, actually, I think I have just the one. It's a Mercedes-Benz. Oh, Alice and John came to me all smiles. Don't you fret any more. Dr. Gossett has found another car for you. What color is it? That was all I wanted to know. They couldn't answer that question. It's a Mercedes, they informed me. I didn't know the word Mercedes. I thought they were naming a color, and I said, what's Mercedes? They said, never mind. Just go have a look at it. See what you think. So the next time Dr. Gossett worked on my teeth, he took me to his house after the session. The car disappointed me. It was no Dodge Neon. I'll say that much. It looked small. I didn't mind the size, actually. I even liked a smaller car, but I didn't like the looks of it. The boxy style, the old-fashioned grille, and the color. It was a sort of dull gold. I felt all disappointed and sullen. The big red car appealed to my fantasies. It looked modern to me, and best of all, it was red. I love red. Everyone was saying, but girl, this is a Mercedes, a famous brand. It will run for a long time without breaking down. I said to myself, well, the red car is gone. I will have to settle for a Mercedes. It won't be so bad. At least it's a car. Later, when I told people I had a Mercedes-Benz, they always gasped. Other Afghans were agog to learn what model of car I was driving. They couldn't believe it. Gradually, I came to realize that I have something quite special here. It's pretty old, of course, but it runs very well. I found out later as well that it belonged to Dr. Gossett's wife. She bought herself a new car, and that's when she decided to give the old one to us. Now that I have a car, I can go to the grocery store by myself. I can drive to Alice's house when the weather is nice. I drive to school too, although if it's raining or snowing, I still take the bus. I don't want to take any chances. In fact, I have gotten to know this whole area pretty well since I got a car. I can find my way to the place that sells halal meat. I can go to the houses of the other Afghans we have come to know. Everything I need is within 15 minutes of my house, it turns out. I have not yet driven to downtown Chicago, but in my own area, I'm not afraid to go anywhere.